So that was in June '66. We were sent to Vietnam. In August '66, there was a big clash which became the Battle of Long Tan, and that's what I want to spend the rest of the time talking to you about. And I'll keep it short because I'd much rather answer your questions, if you've got any, than just rabbit on about what I think you might like to know. So on the night of the 17th of August, the enemy bombarded our base in Vietnam with mortar, artillery and rocket fire. And the following morning, a company was sent out to find out what they could about the enemy that had done that. And they found where the enemy had been firing from, and then at about midday, another company, Delta Company, was sent out to follow up what was obviously the route that the enemy had withdrawn on. During this time, I had my company out on a 3-day patrol to the north of this area of activity, and on the 18th, we returned as scheduled to the base, only to find very shortly thereafter that Delta Company were involved in a very severe battle for survival, really. So my company was tasked with reinforcing them, and so we were allocated 10 APCs. So we raced out. It was about 5 kilometres from the base that this battle had started, and so we raced out there in the APCs, and by sheer luck we encountered 2 large forces of main force enemy encircling Delta Company to launch a final annihilating attack on them. And we were just there, not too early. If we'd been any earlier, we would have been with Delta Company and been subject to the final overwhelming assault by the enemy. And if we'd been another few minutes later, it would have been all over. The enemy would have overrun what was left of Delta Company. They'd already suffered some 16 guys dead and 24 wounded, so they wouldn't have lasted long after a concerted assault. So we intercepted these encircling forces, and that was enough to persuade the overall enemy commander that he wasn't going to win, and so they withdrew. So what looked like being a total disaster for the Australian forces, in the end we were able to rout the enemy and claim it as a victory. And throughout this whole battle, the big advantage that we had over the enemy was the fact that we had artillery support, which the enemy didn't have. And so most of the enemy casualties, the estimates vary, but somewhere around 5 or so 100 enemy casualties in that battle, most of them to that artillery fire. And so we prevailed by sheer good luck in the main. So, over to you guys. If you've got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Charles, what was the estimate of the VC that were attacking the base that ran into deep?
The size of the enemy force? It became exaggerated in the short aftermath, but now the considered guesstimate is, having access to the enemy records and so on, that the enemy force was in the vicinity of 2,000.
Okay.
And Delta Company was about 100 and my company was about 100. So, we would have been thoroughly outnumbered had the enemy been able to prosecute the battle the way they set out to do. Don't be sure, yeah.
How long were you in the army?
I ended up being in the army about 30 years, actually. Part of that was I started life in the part-time army in what was called the citizen military forces in those days, because I'd been called up as a national serviceman in 1954, and I soldiered on from that service, partly in the army, and then I transferred into the regular army. Yep.
How many people did you think were in the Viet Cong? Because you said that it was later on you found out the number. What was it estimated at the time? Do you remember?
Well, the early estimates were something like 6,000 enemy, but now it's more readily accepted. It was about 1,500 to 2,000 enemy soldiers. Yeah.
So you said the battle was in Long Tan. Where was your base located from in respects to Long Tan?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Say it again.
Like, where was your base located at that time?
Well, we established our base on a little hill called Nui Dat, and that was about in the centre of Phuc Tuy province, which is the province that we accepted responsibility to combat the enemy. The battalion that was sent prior to us, the year before us, actually joined an American force. They were mainly tasked with defending the big air base that the Americans established mainly for bombing raids. But that airfield, which is where we flew in when we were deployed there, it was the busiest airport in the world, and it was a combination of fighter aircraft, bombing aircraft, helicopters, airliners coming in. It was an incredibly busy airport. Yes.
I have a question. Did you fly any of the planes that they had there?
Did I fly in any of the aeroplanes?
Yeah.
Well, one of my jobs while I was there was the air liaison officer. So that made me responsible for coordinating fighter ground attack aircraft and for helicopter support, because we used helicopters to lift my troops into battle and out of battle quite often. And so somebody in the hierarchy decided that that would be more effective if the ground troops went with the Air Force and some pilots went with the ground force on patrol in the jungle, so we had a better idea of with whom we were dealing. And so I got flown up to this big air base at Penwa, got a briefing. We were going on a bombing raid, and so there were 3 F4 Phantom jets in the bombing raid, the leader of which was a twin cockpit aircraft, also a F4 Phantom. So off we went and did a bombing raid, which was quite close to the airport. So when we returned, still had a lot of fuel. So the flight leader asked for ground control approach, so practice. So which is what's used in poor visibility or at night. So and he sent the other 2 aircraft in ahead of himself. So we were flying around waiting for our turn to land. We had to wait for airliners and other helicopters and spotter aircraft and all sorts of things going on. So we were flying around. So I said to the pilot, who was sitting behind me, if I could have a feel for the thing. I had never flown an aeroplane at that stage. I could hardly spell aeroplane, I think. Anyhow, so he said, "Your aircraft, sir," because I outranked him. And so he said, "Take your instructions from the ground controller." So, what's our call sign? So I got the call sign and proceeded to fly this F4 around the base for about the next 10 minutes. But because I had no expertise whatsoever, every time the ground controller gave me a new direction to fly, I would bank the aeroplane and promptly fall out of the sky. So I'd see the altimeter going like so. It took me quite a while to get the feel of it too. So we survived all that, and what I left out of that story, I got a briefing, of course, before going on this raid, and the fellow giving the briefing, after I'd been dressed up in a G-suit and helmet and all that, he said, "Don't bump that lever, that's the ejection lever." So when the pilot got in the aircraft, or we were heading for the target, he said to me, "If we get hit or have any other problems, I'll say eject, eject, eject. And as soon as you hear that, you grab that bloody lever." So he said, "I'll say eject, eject, eject." And he said, "If you hear the third one, you're the pilot in command." Because he's already gone. Yeah. I think we're out of time, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I hope that was of some use.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, sir. Honestly, that is honestly, I think a lot of us learnt a lot from that, especially I did. But not just you, but also the other mentors today. They're all hiding away. Honestly, we've learnt a lot. Your guidance has really helped us with the plane build, especially learning a lot about Long Tan and Vietnam. I think a lot of us, obviously, are being a bit younger, haven't been around that. So that was really good. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure. Yeah. So after the pilot took over and landed the Phantom jet, we were then taxiing around to the bun, and the air traffic controller came on the airway and with a comment about my flying, and he was obviously from the southern states, because he said that would have to be the most god-awful exhibition of flying I ever seen.
Good stuff.